Did the lyrics come first, Ian, or were you one who sat down and wrote all the music and then scratched your head to see what words would fit, even if they weren't going to be coming from the febrile mind of a precocious 8-year-old boy? Well, actually, the lyrics were pretty much the first thing. When I decided I was going to have a go at doing this, I sketched out a plan on a piece of paper. It was quite a detailed concept, no other word for it, as to how this would all shape and what different characters Gerald might have evolved into and how they would make their presence. So the lyrics were really all written, and it took me, I guess, about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks in February of 2011. By the end of February, I had it all mapped out. The music had slotted into place right behind all the lyrics as I was writing, really. And so I took myself off to Munich to sit down for a couple of days with Floreno Parley, our guitar player, and we did some very basic little demos where it just put the music into a context that it could be understood. And it was pretty much all there at that point. I then went back to the UK, spent a couple of days with John O'Hara, our keyboard player, and we put all that together painstakingly in the music software called Sibelius that we've used for orchestrations, doing detailed arrangements of large-scale orchestras or string quartets or indeed rock bands. So that was all done, and we handed that out, the big, thick, beefy score of all the music, pretty much complete with all the lyrics, and that was given to the other musicians, I guess, sometime during March. And then we forgot about it, did nothing with it whatsoever, really, until towards the end of November, where we got into the studio and started to do the rehearsal. But at least with the benefit of the score, the guys had had a few months to sit, deliberate on it, chat over it in dressing rooms, and so it was a kind of timing thing. It was having the ball rolling, so that in November, when we started to rehearse, we really moved on very fast through about 7-8 days of rehearsal into 10 days of recording and tidying up vocals and flute bits and things, and on into the mixing process. So we pretty much delivered that album around the middle of December. It was all done and dusted, and indeed most of the artwork complete by then too. So we were bang on schedule for once. It all went pretty much like clockwork. And the ball was rolling, gathering momentum, and there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm as it progressed, and we knew we were getting a good recording, a good performance, and pretty much a vital musical feel about it that became apparent in rehearsal, but specifically in recording, when that extra little pressure kicks in, when the proverbial red light goes on and it's take one. And quite often it was take one. There wasn't a take two, which is always a good feeling. Yeah, well now, would it take long to write and record? I think you asked that question already. I don't know why you're answering most of these questions that I've written down here to ask you, almost as if you knew what I was going to say next. How curious. But why not go the whole hog and record it all on analog tape and do a real retro thing, with valve microphones and make it a real retro performance. Take it right back to the 70s. Why not? Well, I'm not really one for the romantic idea that 70s music sounded great. I mean, it sounded great in terms of performance, in terms of the verve, the enthusiasm of all those great musicians back then, but in terms of audio quality, it wasn't necessarily that good. And I think the idea of going back and recording on hissy old analog tape, whilst it's appealing in some ways, the idea that you get it there and it's there, you don't fool around and easily change what's on the tape. It's kind of appealing in the sense that you make a mark and it's likely to stay there all the way through, whereas digitally you have the option to just delete or replace or copy or paste, and copying and pasting is one of those easy ways out when you have a chorus that repeats or a line that repeats, but it's something we absolutely didn't do on TAAB 2 at all. Every bar was recorded as if it was a brand new piece of music, and so we didn't resort to the I don't want to call it trickery, but the convenience of being able to cut, copy, paste, and do those actions in the digital domain. But the real advantage is getting the clarity. You know, recording a 24-bit, it's so superior to the sound you hear on the CD, and of course, you know, an MP3 is rather like the cassette in the way that it is a rather compressed but convenient way to listen to music. But at least with MP3s you can choose the resolution you want to make them at, and I think what we ended up with, especially on the special edition of TAAB 2, where you have the 24-bit audio stereo mix as well as the 5.1 surround mixes, and of course the CD in you know, standard 16-bit configuration, you know, you have all these options as the way to listen to it, and I think that's been probably the first time really for me that I've gone into the studio thinking in terms of 24-bit recording, knowing that that's the way people would have the option to listen to it. So no, I would never go back to the analog days, and certainly not to the vinyl days, although it is on the cards that there will be a vinyl imprint of TAAB 2 to go with a remastered Thick as a Brick 1. Towards the end of this year, we will attempt to do the near impossible and squeeze 53 minutes and 45 seconds or whatever it is onto vinyl, courtesy of cutting onto a copper disc, which does at least mean that you have a better chance of making the further parts in the factory process to get a reasonable quality vinyl record. So that's one of those little tasks ahead later in the year, when I shall probably venture down to Abbey Road again, and we'll give the vinyl pressing just one last shot. What problems oppose when it comes to performing Thick as a Brick 2 live on stage? Is it going to be an arduous job, or a lot of rehearsal involved, a lot of technology involved perhaps? Well, yes, it is. It's going to be difficult because of learning all the music, number one. And number two, in terms of presenting it and working out just all those quick changes where I have to put down the acoustic guitar and grab the flute, and then I'm going to be there on the stage or there on the stage. And all of these things have to become like clockwork. But you also don't want it to get too clockwork. You've got to have a little bit of improv, a little bit of opportunity to vary it a bit from night to night, so that you always feel you're kind of on the edge of cosy performance, always just sitting on the edge of your seat, in the sense of not quite sure every minute of the performance just how it's going to go. You've got to set yourself some level of insecurity, I think, but that's built into the music anyway, because of course there is quite a lot of improvisation for all the band members in Thick as a Brick 2. Thick as a Brick 1, well, that's a bit more tricky still, because although we played, I guess, 15 minutes or so, Thick as a Brick has been a frequent visitor to the Jethro, Tull and the Ian Anderson set lists over the years. To do the whole thing, which I've never done since 1972, is daunting, particularly because of the complexity of and the reiterations and developments on side 2 of the original Thick as a Brick. Side 2 meaning the vinyl side 2, and there's some tricky moments in there. It's tricky also because I'm playing, you know, 2 acoustic guitars, the flute and the vocals all at the same time, silly Billy, therefore making an impossible task when it comes to do that live. So I've got to make my choices, and to help me we'll have another performer on stage who will be a singing actor who will bring a little theatricality to the show, as well as do the odd bits of vocals and some other instrumental bits. So we have an extra musician, an extra person, an extra hand out there on the workforce to help make it happen. But yeah, it's pretty daunting, and from time to time I go in and tackle a new bit of music that I haven't played for 40 years and find that it's not so difficult. It's just getting it all in here and keeping it all in here is the bit where you've really got to bring that focus and that discipline to bear when it comes to learning music and being able to recall it without reference to too many cue sheets or notes, because we're not classical musicians who read it off the paper. It's got to be in here, and more importantly, it's got to be in here. Good point, Ian. Well made. Well, we've come to the end of the second segment of this interview. Ian's going really well so far, and going droning on a little bit from time to time, if I may say so, but fascinating stuff nonetheless. We'll be back with Ian Anderson in a moment.